I was heading out of my own restaurant when the young waiter quickly locked the front door behind me. "Mr. Ash, wait!" Her voice shook as she glanced around the empty parking lot. "Promise me you won't faint when I show you this." Marion had been our part-time server for 2 years, working her way through college. For a 20-year-old who'd handled every type of difficult customer, nothing usually rattled her. But tonight, fear painted her face pale under the streetlights. "What is it?" "I recorded something today. About you. About what they've been doing to you." She looked over her shoulder again. "But once you hear this, everything changes. Your family will never be the same." The recording was only 30 seconds long, but those 30 seconds shattered 40 years of trust and revealed a betrayal so calculated, so vicious, that my own son's voice became unrecognizable. What I heard that night didn't just threaten my business empire. It threatened my life. And if you think family could never do this to family, you're about to discover how wrong you can be. Because the people we trust most have the best access to destroy us completely. What happened next will show you exactly how far some people will go for money, and how to fight back when your own blood turns against you. My name is Vernon Ash, and I'm 69 years old. I've spent the last 41 years building something that matters. Ashton Family Bistro, 8 locations across Portland, Oregon. We're not just restaurants. We're gathering places where 3 generations of families have celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, first dates, business deals, and ordinary Tuesday nights that somehow become treasured memories. I started with absolutely nothing. $1,000 borrowed against my car title and a dream that scared everyone who knew me. Helen, my wife of 38 years, was the only person who believed. She worked double shifts at Portland General Hospital while I renovated our first tiny storefront, 800 square feet of pure possibility in Southeast Portland's struggling commercial district. Those early days tested everything we thought we knew about ourselves, learning to balance books with flour-dusted hands, sleeping 4 hours a night between prep work and cleaning, teaching myself to read profit margins the way other men read sports pages, dealing with health inspectors, difficult customers, equipment breakdowns, and the constant fear that we'd lose everything. But Helen had faith enough for both of us during those dark months when success seemed impossible. "You have a nose for this business," she'd say every morning, adjusting the faded brown apron she bought me that first week. "Feed people well, treat them like family, and success will follow. It always does." She was right about most things. Helen understood people in ways I never could. She remembered customers' names, their children's birthdays, their favorite tables. She made our little restaurant feel like home for people who needed one. When Helen passed 18 months ago, after a brief but fierce battle with pancreatic cancer, everyone expected me to sell immediately. "Time to retire, Vernon. Enjoy your golden years. Travel. Relax. You've earned it." But these hands still know their way around a commercial kitchen. My mind stays sharp with inventory schedules, payroll calculations, vendor negotiations, and the 1,000 daily decisions that keep 8 restaurants running smoothly. I'm not ready to stop. Helen wouldn't want me to stop. Every morning at exactly 6 o'clock, I unlock the flagship location myself. I check the walk-in coolers, review yesterday's numbers, inspect the dining room setup, and prepare for the staff meeting at 7. Every afternoon at 12:30 sharp, I sit in booth 7 and eat the same bowl of signature pho I've had for decades. Our most popular dish, perfected through years of tiny adjustments and customer feedback. It's a ritual Helen started during our 3rd year of operation. "You need to taste what your customers taste," she'd insist, watching me work through another 18-hour day. How can you serve something you won't eat yourself? How can you improve something you don't experience? My son Harvey took over day-to-day operations 5 years ago when I started thinking about succession planning. He's 41 now, ambitious and energetic, always talking about modernizing systems and scaling for sustainable growth. His business degree from Portland State taught him terms I'd never heard, concepts that seemed to complicate what I'd always found elegantly simple. His wife Eleanor handles our financial operations with impressive precision. Sharp woman, graduated summa cum laude with an accounting degree and a minor in business law. She reorganized our entire bookkeeping system, streamlined our vendor relationships, negotiated better rates with suppliers, and implemented cost-saving measures I'd never considered. They've been remarkably good to me since Helen's death. Harvey insists on driving me to doctor appointments, won't let me take public transportation like I prefer. Eleanor remembers every important date, birthdays, anniversaries, Helen's memorial, and makes sure the restaurants run smoothly during my rare vacations to visit Helen's sister in Sacramento. Family means everything in this business. That's what I taught Harvey when he was 16, washing dishes in the back of our original location after school and weekends. Take care of the people who matter most, and they'll take care of you, I'd tell him while showing him how to balance registers, count tips, and handle difficult customer situations with grace. Marion started working for us part-time when she turned 18 2 years ago. College student studying business administration at Portland State, but she has natural instincts that can't be taught. She watches people carefully, notices patterns others miss, asks the right questions at exactly the right moments. Helen would have loved her. I believed in family loyalty completely, without question or reservation, right up until I saw last month's financial reports and realized something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Numbers don't lie. In 40 years of reading profit and loss statements, quarterly reports, and cash flow analyses, I've learned to spot irregularities like an experienced mechanic hears engine trouble. The September report showed revenue down 12% across all 8 locations, but operating costs up nearly 20%. That mathematical combination doesn't happen naturally in a stable business environment. I found Eleanor in our main administrative office behind the flagship restaurant, surrounded by precisely organized stacks of invoices, receipts, and financial documents. She maintained that patient, slightly condescending expression she always wore when explaining complex business matters to me, the same look you'd give a bright child asking about advanced calculus. "Something's been bothering me about these consultant fees," I said, carefully spreading the September reports across her immaculate desk. $15,000 monthly to Morrison Strategic Solutions. What exactly are they consulting on that costs so much? Her fingers paused over the computer keyboard, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. 40 years of reading people in high-pressure business situations had taught me to notice those tiny tells. "Oh, that's the technology consulting firm Harvey contracted to completely modernize our point-of-sale systems," she explained with practiced patience. "You know how outdated our equipment has become over the years. 15,000 monthly seems excessive for computer advice. It's not just computers, Vernon. It's a comprehensive digital transformation." Her tone grew slightly defensive. "Point-of-sale integration, cloud-based inventory management software, customer relationship databases, online ordering platforms, social media marketing automation, the works." She turned back to her screen with an air of dismissing the conversation. "Harvey can explain all the technical details better than I can. You know how he loves that technology stuff." I nodded and headed toward the door, but something nagged at me with increasing intensity. In 4 decades of business relationships, vendor partnerships, and industry networking, I'd never encountered Morrison Strategic Solutions. If we were investing that kind of money monthly, nearly $200,000 annually, why hadn't anyone discussed it with me previously? And why did Eleanor seem relieved when I appeared to drop the subject? That evening, I made some phone calls. Our 3 longest vendor relationships, companies I'd worked with for over 20 years. Northwest Restaurant Supply had provided our equipment since 1985. Pacific Food Distributors had delivered fresh ingredients for nearly 2 decades. Portland Commercial Equipment had serviced our appliances for 15 years. None had heard of Morrison Strategic Solutions. None had worked with them on any industry projects or recommendations. I also noticed something else that troubled me deeply. Harvey had started wearing an expensive titanium watch, something that probably cost more than most people make in a month. Eleanor drove a new BMW instead of her reliable Honda Accord. Small luxuries, perhaps, but ones that didn't match their known salaries from the restaurant business. More concerning, I'd begun experiencing strange episodes of confusion and drowsiness during business hours. brief moments where I'd forget important meetings or struggle to concentrate on financial documents. It only happened at work, never at home. Why hadn't anyone told me about spending $15,000 monthly on a company that apparently didn't exist in our industry? Sunday family dinner was sacred in our household, a tradition Helen had established early in our marriage, and I'd maintained religiously even after her death. Harvey and Eleanor came to my house every week without fail, usually bringing Marion when her college schedule and work shifts allowed. This particular Sunday in early October, they arrived with unusual energy and excitement. Eleanor carried an expensive bottle of French wine, something with an elaborate label and vintage date that I didn't recognize. Harvey wore that new titanium watch prominently, checking it frequently during our conversation as if it were some kind of status symbol. Business must be more profitable than I realized, I observed, nodding toward the watch as we sat down to my weekly attempt at Helen's legendary pot roast recipe. Oh, this old thing? Harvey glanced at his wrist with feigned casualness. Anniversary gift from Eleanor. You know how she likes to spoil me with extravagant presents. Eleanor's laugh sounded forced and slightly nervous. Vernon, we wanted to discuss something important with you tonight, something we've been concerned about for several weeks now. I kept my expression carefully neutral, but 41 years of marriage had taught me to read subtext, like financial statements. The expensive wine, the new luxury accessories, the carefully orchestrated conversation, they'd obviously planned this entire evening in advance. We've been thinking quite seriously, Harvey continued, cutting his meat with deliberate, almost ceremonial precision. You've been working incredibly hard since Mom died, longer hours than ever. Maybe it's time to consider sharing more of the operational responsibility. I appreciate the concern, son, but I'm managing perfectly fine. Are you, though? Eleanor leaned forward with what appeared to be genuine concern. We've noticed you seem tired lately, sometimes forgetful during business meetings. Last week you asked me about the Morrison strategic contract multiple times in the same day. I hadn't asked about it multiple times. I'd asked once, received an unsatisfactory answer, and decided to investigate independently through our vendor network. But I chose to play along with their narrative. Did I really? I honestly don't recall asking repeatedly. They exchanged a meaningful glance across the dinner table. Harvey set down his fork with dramatic deliberation, as if making a difficult decision. Dad, we've taken the liberty of scheduling an appointment with Dr. Reeves. He's a specialist who works exclusively with older adults who might be experiencing cognitive changes. What kind of cognitive changes? Memory issues, concentration problems, decision-making difficulties, Eleanor said with gentle patience. Nothing necessarily alarming, just preventive evaluation to establish a baseline. I nodded slowly, pretending to process this information with some difficulty. When is this appointment scheduled? Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. I'll drive you myself, of course. As something cold and heavy settled in my chest. They'd made medical appointments without consulting me. They were discussing my mental capacity as if I weren't sitting right there at the table. The expensive wine, Harvey's new watch, Eleanor's BMW. Where was this sudden influx of money actually coming from? There's something else we need to address, Harvey said with careful, measured words. We think it might be prudent to discuss transferring some ownership responsibilities, just to protect the business interests, you understand. Ensure everything's properly structured for the future. I blinked at him with what I hoped appeared like genuine confusion. Transferring ownership to whom exactly? To us. To me and Eleanor. We've been managing daily operations anyway for the past few years. This would simply make everything legal and official. The conversation continued for another uncomfortable hour. They painted an increasingly detailed picture of my supposed gradual decline, my alleged inability to handle complex business decisions, the potential danger I posed to our family's financial security through poor judgment. But I noticed something else that deeply disturbed me. After dinner, Eleanor prepared a special herbal tea for me, something she called a digestive blend with exotic herbs designed to help me sleep better. She watched me drink every drop with unusual, focused attention, and I realized something truly troubling. The only times I felt genuinely confused, disoriented, and drowsy were after my daily faux lunches at the restaurant. The sacred routine Helen had established, the ritual I'd maintained faithfully for decades. Why did I only feel mentally foggy after eating at my own restaurant? That night, despite Eleanor's supposedly soothing digestive tea, I couldn't sleep at all. I sat in my kitchen until nearly 4 in the morning, systematically thinking through everything I knew about running a successful business, reading people under pressure, and recognizing genuine threats to my livelihood. When you've survived in competitive business environments as long as I have, you develop highly tuned instincts about when something is fundamentally wrong. The financial discrepancies weren't accidental mistakes. The unsolicited medical appointment wasn't loving concern. The sudden interest in ownership transfer wasn't protective planning. This was something much darker and more calculated. The next morning, I called my attorney immediately. William Morrison, absolutely no relation to the mysterious consulting firm, a coincidence that now seemed ominous, had handled my legal affairs with scrupulous honesty for 15 years. His office overlooked the Willamette River through floor-to-ceiling windows, all dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books that spoke of serious, expensive legal work. "Vernon, always good to see you. You sounded urgent on the phone. What's troubling you?" I told him absolutely everything. The suspicious financial reports with unexplained consultant fees, the medical specialist appointment I hadn't requested or authorized, Harvey and Eleanor's sudden, urgent concern about my supposed mental capacity, the expensive personal purchases that didn't match their known income from restaurant work. William listened without interrupting, occasionally making detailed notes on his yellow legal pad. His expression grew increasingly grave and focused as I described the previous evening's dinner conversation and their obvious coordination. "What you're describing sounds exactly like financial elder abuse," he said finally, setting down his pen with deliberate emphasis. "It's far more common than most people realize, and unfortunately, family members are the perpetrators in approximately 90% of documented cases." "Elder abuse? My own son and daughter-in-law?" "I'm afraid so, Vernon. Adult children are often motivated by inheritance anxiety, financial desperation, gambling debts, failed investments, or simple greed." He consulted his notes carefully. "The pattern you're describing, medical evaluation to establish mental incompetence, pressure for power of attorney transfer, mysterious financial transactions, sudden concern about your decision-making capacity, these are absolutely classic warning signs." William outlined a comprehensive 2-phase investigative plan. Phase 1 would involve gathering absolutely irrefutable evidence. Independent cognitive assessment by a qualified, board-certified neurologist, definitely not Dr. Reeves. Comprehensive blood work to test for any substances that might be affecting my mental clarity. Professional financial forensics to trace every questionable transaction. Hidden recording devices to capture potentially incriminating conversations. Phase 2 would involve setting an elaborate legal trap. We'd let Harvey and Eleanor believe their plan was working perfectly, while we built an airtight case for criminal prosecution. I know an excellent forensic accountant who specializes in financial fraud cases, Patricia Chen. She's absolutely brilliant at following complex money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts. And I can recommend an audio-technical expert who authenticates recordings for court proceedings. What about Marion? She works part-time at the restaurant as a server. Could she provide inside information about their activities? William nodded thoughtfully, considering the possibilities. An inside source could be invaluable for our investigation. But Vernon, you absolutely must understand. If we're correct about this situation, we're talking about serious felony charges, fraud, financial elder abuse, possibly even attempted poisoning if they're deliberately drugging your food. I thought about Harvey as an eager teenager, desperate to learn every aspect of the restaurant business, about Eleanor organizing Helen's funeral arrangements with such care, handling every painful detail so I could focus on grieving my wife's loss. They're still my family, William. I understand completely, but if they're deliberately compromising your mental state to steal your life's work, family loyalty might be a luxury you simply can't afford anymore. William was absolutely right. The time had come to build my war room and fight back with everything I had. This felt like preparing for warfare against my own flesh and blood. The investigative plan required extraordinary patience and careful, consistent performance. For the next 3 weeks, I played the exact part Harvey and Eleanor expected. The increasingly confused, aging father gradually losing his grip on business reality and personal competence. I asked the same questions multiple times during staff meetings, appearing genuinely puzzled by my own repetition. I misplaced important documents deliberately, then appeared frustrated and slightly panicked when searching for them. I even forgot about the scheduled appointment with Dr. Reeves, giving Harvey a perfect excuse to reschedule and demonstrate even more concern about my declining condition. Meanwhile, Williams' expert team worked methodically behind the scenes. Dr. Sarah Williams, an independent neurologist with 30 years of clinical experience and impeccable credentials, conducted her own comprehensive assessment. 2 intensive hours of standardized memory tests, cognitive evaluations, executive function analysis, even detailed brain imaging that would detect any actual neurological problems. Her conclusion was absolutely definitive. My mental faculties were completely normal for my age. Better than normal, actually. No signs whatsoever of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other cognitive impairment that would justify guardianship proceedings. Patricia Chen, the forensic accountant William recommended, analyzed 18 months of business records with the thoroughness of a federal investigation. Her findings were devastating to Harvey and Eleanor's credibility. Morrison Strategic Solutions was indeed a completely fabricated shell company. The monthly $15,000 payments flowed directly to accounts controlled by someone named Julian Blackwood, a man I'd never heard of in 40 years of extensive business operations and industry networking. Most importantly, comprehensive blood work revealed significant traces of zolpidem in my system. Zolpidem is the active ingredient in Ambien, a powerful prescription sleep medication I'd never been prescribed by any physician. The levels detected suggested I was receiving approximately 10 milligrams daily, enough to cause serious confusion, memory problems, and significantly altered behavior that could easily be mistaken for early dementia by someone without proper medical training. They're definitely putting it in your food, William explained during one of our secret evening meetings in his office. Probably your daily faux ritual, small but consistent doses, just enough to make you appear drowsy and confused during important business hours. We installed sophisticated surveillance equipment in the restaurant kitchen, tiny cameras positioned strategically behind the spice rack where they couldn't be detected by staff members. We also prepared professional-grade recording equipment, a device small enough to hide in my shirt pocket that could capture hours of conversation with perfect audio quality. The trap was carefully, methodically set. Now we needed the perfect bait to spring it. I chose a busy Friday afternoon for my most critical performance. The restaurant hummed with efficient lunch service, staff moving seamlessly between tables, the familiar symphony of successful business operations that Helen and I had orchestrated for decades. I found Harvey first, expediting orders in the kitchen with his usual intensity, making sure my voice carried just enough concern and uncertainty to sound completely genuine. Son, I've been thinking that seriously about our recent conversation about the business becoming too demanding and complex for someone my age. I paused deliberately, letting uncertainty creep into my tone. Maybe it really is time to consider selling a couple of the suburban locations. Downsize the entire operation. Harvey dropped his spatula with a metallic clatter. Sell locations? Dad, you absolutely don't want to do that. Those suburban spots are our most consistently profitable units. But if my memory is deteriorating like you and Eleanor think, I don't want to become a burden on the family business or make poor decisions that hurt everyone. I watched him process this information carefully, watched the wheels turning rapidly behind his eyes. If I was seriously considering selling profitable assets, they needed to accelerate their timeline immediately. Any delay might mean losing control of valuable real estate and business equity. Let me discuss this with Eleanor right away, he said with barely concealed urgency. Maybe there's a better solution, a more comprehensive way to protect everything you've built over the years. Within exactly 2 hours, Eleanor approached me with urgent concern written clearly across her face. Vernon, Harvey told me about your selling idea. We absolutely cannot allow you to make that kind of major decision right now, not when you're struggling with these memory issues. But it's still my business. Of course it is, legally, but maybe we should expedite that appointment with Dr. Reeves significantly. And there are some important protective legal documents we should execute immediately, just to safeguard your interests and the business. That same afternoon, they produced official-looking papers I'd never seen before. Power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, business transfer documents, legal paperwork that would give Harvey and Eleanor complete, irrevocable control over my finances and business operations. I pretended to read them carefully, squinting at small print with exaggerated difficulty and obvious confusion. This seems quite complex and overwhelming. What exactly am I signing here? Just protective measures, Eleanor assured me with practiced patient kindness. So if something serious happens to your health, we can ensure the business continues operating smoothly and profitably. I signed preliminary versions of everything they placed before me, documents William had prepared that looked completely official but held absolutely no actual legal weight. Harvey and Eleanor couldn't distinguish between real legal papers and convincing forgeries prepared by an experienced attorney. But I noticed something deeply troubling that afternoon. Eleanor prepared my usual faux bowl personally, adding what she called extra nutrients and vitamins to help boost my energy levels and mental clarity. She watched me consume every spoonful with unusual focused attention that made my skin crawl. I was walking directly into a trap that had been set by my own son. 3 days later, Marion called with the breakthrough we'd been desperately waiting for. Her voice carried an urgency and fear I'd never heard before in 2 years of working together. Mr. Ashe, I need to see you tonight after closing. It's extremely important and can't wait until tomorrow. I arrived at the restaurant at 9:30 sharp. The dining room was completely empty, chairs stacked efficiently on tables, industrial dishwasher humming its final cycle of the day. Marion waited in the kitchen, her face pale and drawn under the harsh fluorescent lighting. I overheard something today that you absolutely need to know about, she whispered, even though we were completely alone in the building. Uncle Harvey and Aunt Eleanor were in the office. They didn't realize I was still here, cleaning tables in the back section. She pulled out her smartphone with visibly trembling hands. I recorded this entire conversation. You're going to want to sit down before you hear this. And the audio quality was crystal clear, devastatingly clear. Harvey's voice, we need to increase the dosage immediately. He's still too alert during important business meetings. Dr. Reeves is asking uncomfortable questions about the timeline for cognitive decline. Eleanor, I've been putting 2 pills in his foe every single day for months. How much higher can we safely increase the dose? Julian says we can safely go up to 3 pills daily without it being medically detectable in standard blood work. Just for a few more weeks, until the conservatorship paperwork goes through the court system. And you're absolutely confident that Dr. Reeves will sign off on the cognitive assessment results? He owes Julian substantial favors from some serious tax evasion issues last year. Once we have official medical documentation that Dad's mentally incompetent, the court will have no legal choice but to grant us full guardianship powers. What about Marion? She's been asking too many questions about the financial records and spending patterns. She's 20 years old and a college student. Nobody takes college kids seriously in complex business matters. Besides, once we control everything completely, we can restructure her employment situation. Maybe eliminate her position entirely to reduce overhead. The conversation continued for several more devastating minutes. They discussed detailed plans for moving money to offshore accounts, specific strategies for selling the original restaurant location for commercial development, even the possibility of placing me in a memory care facility once they had legal guardianship. I sat heavily on a prep stool, feeling the full crushing weight of their calculated betrayal settling into my bones like lead. I'm so incredibly sorry, Mr. Ashe, Marion whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I know this completely breaks your heart. You did exactly the right thing, sweetheart. The brave thing that took real courage. She handed me a thick manila folder with trembling hands. There's even more evidence. I found these emails on Aunt Eleanor's computer yesterday when she left it unlocked during her lunch break. The emails confirmed our absolute worst suspicions and fears. Julian Blackwood wasn't just a fake business consultant. He was a disgraced financial advisor who'd lost his professional license for securities fraud. He'd been systematically helping Harvey and Eleanor establish offshore accounts, forge business documents, even arrange for the compromised medical evaluation with Dr. Reeves. One email made my stomach turn violently. Once the old man is declared legally incompetent by the court, we'll have complete access to everything. The restaurants, his personal accounts, life insurance policies, real estate holdings, investment portfolios. Julian estimates we can liquidate the entire operation within 6 months and disappear to somewhere without extradition treaties. They'd been planning this systematic theft for months, possibly even years, waiting for the perfect opportunity after Helen's death. I should have felt overwhelming, consuming anger. Instead, I felt something much colder and more focused. The absolute clarity that comes with irrefutable certainty about someone's true character. Harvey and Eleanor had made their choice deliberately and with full knowledge of the consequences. Now I would make mine, and it would be final and irreversible. The next morning, they moved faster and more aggressively than I'd anticipated. Harvey arrived at my house before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee, accompanied by Eleanor and a man I'd never seen before. Dad, I'd like you to meet Julian Blackwood. He's the consultant who's been helping us with the complex legal arrangements we discussed last week. Julian appeared younger than I'd imagined from the emails, maybe 45 years old, with the kind of eager, predatory smile that belongs in used car commercials or timeshare presentations. He carried an expensive-looking leather briefcase that felt cheap and hollow when he set it down. Mr. Ash, your son tells me you're very wisely addressing potential cognitive concerns before they become serious problems. Extremely prudent to handle these delicate issues proactively rather than reactively. I played my assigned role perfectly, confused, slightly defensive about my abilities, but ultimately compliant with their professional guidance and expertise. We've prepared absolutely comprehensive documentation for your complete protection and peace of mind. Julian continued with practiced smoothness, spreading official-looking papers across my kitchen table with theatrical precision. Power of attorney documents, healthcare directives, business succession planning, even a completely revised will that protects your valuable assets from potential estate taxes and legal challenges. The documents looked impressively legitimate. Complex legal language, multiple signature pages, notary seals, professional formatting, and letterhead. To a genuinely confused elderly person, they would be completely overwhelming and impossible to understand. Should I have my own independent attorney review these documents before signing? Oh, absolutely no need for that additional expense and delay, Harvey said quickly, almost interrupting my question. Julian represents your interests exclusively and completely. That's exactly what we're paying him substantial fees to do. I signed everything they placed in front of me with careful deliberation. Documents that would transfer my entire life's work to people who were planning to liquidate it for personal profit and disappear. But Harvey and Eleanor had no idea that hidden cameras captured every single moment, every signature, every reassuring lie, every second of their elaborate performance as concerned family members protecting my best interests. They also had no idea that the real documents, the ones with actual legal significance and binding power, remained safely secured in William's office, completely unchanged and protected. There's one final step in this process, Eleanor said as we finished the extensive paperwork. Dr. Reeves wants to see you this afternoon for the official cognitive assessment, just to establish your current mental baseline for the legal records. That afternoon's appointment was a masterpiece of coordinated medical fraud. Dr. Reeves, whose medical license, we would later discover, had been suspended for insurance fraud and patient exploitation, conducted the most biased, unfair cognitive assessment imaginable. He asked impossible questions with no correct answers. Showed me photographs of common household objects, but the images were deliberately blurry and poorly lit. Made me perform complex mathematical calculations without providing paper, pencil, or calculator. Asked me to recall detailed information he'd never actually provided. When I struggled with these impossible, unfair tasks, he nodded knowingly and made dramatic notes. When I answered correctly despite the deliberate obstacles, he repeated the questions with increasing complexity until I made mistakes from exhaustion and frustration. I'm afraid the test results confirm exactly what your concerned family suspected, he told Harvey and Eleanor afterward with false solemnity. Advanced early-stage dementia with significant cognitive decline. Mr. Ashe clearly lacks the mental capacity to manage complex financial affairs or make important business decisions responsibly. They had their fabricated medical evidence. Within exactly 1 week, Harvey filed for emergency conservatorship with the county court, claiming I posed an immediate danger to myself and others by continuing to operate a complex business empire. The legal petition painted a devastating picture of a delusional old man, completely unfit to make basic decisions about his own life or financial affairs. It requested immediate, comprehensive guardianship over all my personal and financial matters. Tomorrow, we would finally discover who was really the fraud in this family. The conservatorship hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning in Multnomah County Circuit Court. Judge Helen Martinez presided, a stern, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd built a formidable reputation for cutting through legal nonsense and getting to the absolute truth in complex cases. Harvey and Eleanor sat confidently with their attorney, a nervous young man who kept shuffling papers and whispering anxiously with his clients. They'd brought Dr. Reeves as their primary witness, along with Julian Blackwood, to testify about my alleged financial incompetence and dangerous business decision-making. I sat beside William Morrison, looking every inch the confused, helpless elderly man they claimed I was. But hidden in my briefcase were 18 months of detailed financial records, comprehensive blood test results, professional neurological evaluations, and audio recordings that would change everything in that courtroom. Judge Martinez called the hearing to order with businesslike efficiency. This is a petition for emergency conservatorship filed by Harvey Ashe on behalf of his father, Vernon Ashe. Mr. Ashe, do you understand these proceedings and your right to legal representation? I nodded slowly, with apparent difficulty processing the question. I believe so, Your Honor. My son thinks I can't take care of myself anymore. That's exactly right, Dad, Harvey said with manufactured gentleness and concern. We just want to help protect you and everything you've worked so hard to build. Judge Martinez turned to Harvey's attorney with professional skepticism. Present your case and evidence. What followed was a carefully orchestrated performance designed to paint me as mentally incompetent and dangerous. Dr. Reeves testified that I suffered from significant cognitive decline and posed a serious financial danger to myself and others through poor judgment. Julian Blackwood claimed that my recent business decisions had become erratic and potentially harmful to the company's long-term financial interests. They presented their fabricated evidence methodically and persuasively. Dr. Reeves's fraudulent assessment results, carefully selected examples of my alleged confusion during business meetings, detailed testimony about my dangerous desire to sell profitable assets without rational justification. It was convincing professional theater. If I had been the confused old man they described, I would have lost everything that mattered that day. Then Williams stood up with quiet, controlled authority. Your Honor, respondent respectfully requests the right to present evidence that directly contradicts every claim made by the petitioners. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow with obvious interest. The respondent seems perfectly capable of requesting legal representation himself. Mr. Ashe, do you understand what your attorney is proposing to do? This was my crucial moment. I straightened in my chair, and when I spoke, my voice carried the absolute clarity of 40 years in successful business. Yes, Your Honor, I understand that my son and daughter-in-law have been systematically drugging my food with Ambien for 8 months, stealing money from my business accounts, and conspiring with a disgraced financial advisor to have me declared incompetent so they can steal my life's work and disappear. The courtroom fell into absolute, stunned silence. William approached the bench with controlled professional authority. Your Honor, we have substantial, irrefutable evidence of elder abuse, financial fraud, and criminal conspiracy. I respectfully request permission to present expert witnesses. Judge Martinez looked from Harvey and Eleanor, both suddenly pale as paper, to the confident, articulate man sitting in my chair. Permission enthusiastically granted. This should prove very enlightening indeed. Dr. Patricia Williams took the witness stand first. A board-certified neurologist with 30 years of clinical experience, she commanded the courtroom with quiet scientific authority and unshakable credibility. I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment of Mr. Vernon Ashe on October 15th, she testified with professional precision. 2 hours of standardized testing, including memory evaluation, executive function analysis, and detailed neurological imaging. What were your findings, doctor? Mr. Ashe demonstrates cognitive function significantly above average for his age group. His memory, reasoning ability, and decision-making capacity are completely normal. There is absolutely no evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other cognitive impairment whatsoever. Harvey's attorney objected desperately. Your Honor, Dr. Reeves conducted his own professional assessment with different conclusions. Dr. Reeves, Dr. Williams interrupted calmly, is not a board-certified neurologist and has no specialized training in cognitive assessment. His medical license was suspended last month by the State Medical Board for insurance fraud and patient exploitation. I have the official documentation if the court requires verification. Judge Martinez made careful notes. Please continue, doctor. Furthermore, comprehensive blood work revealed significant levels of zolpidem in Mr. Ashe's system. Zolpidem is the active ingredient in Ambien, a powerful prescription sleep medication that can cause confusion, memory problems, and significantly altered behavior when administered inappropriately. Was Mr. Ashe prescribed this medication by any licensed physician? No, Your Honor. The levels detected suggest he was receiving approximately 10 milligrams daily without his knowledge or consent. This dosage would easily produce symptoms that could be mistaken for early dementia by someone without proper neurological training. The forensic accountant, Patricia Chen, testified next with devastating precision. She'd spent 3 intensive weeks analyzing every financial transaction across all 8 restaurant locations with the thoroughness of a federal investigation. I discovered evidence of systematic, sophisticated financial fraud, she told the court with scientific certainty. Over 18 months, approximately $240,000 was illegally transferred from legitimate business accounts to an entity called Morrison Strategic Solutions. She presented detailed charts showing the complex money trail with professional clarity. Funds flowing from the restaurants to a shell company, then immediately to personal accounts controlled exclusively by Julian Blackwood. What about the monthly payments of $15,000? Completely fraudulent ghost invoices. Mr. Blackwood would submit bills for non-existent consulting services. Mrs. Eleanor Ashe, who controlled the accounts payable process, would approve and process payments knowing they were completely fraudulent. Patricia Chen walked the court through 18 months of financial manipulation with devastating precision. Ghost employees on the payroll receiving paychecks that were immediately cashed by Harvey and Eleanor. Inflated vendor invoices with secret kickback arrangements. Even forged signatures on business loan applications. The pattern clearly indicates this was planned well in advance of any alleged cognitive decline, she concluded with scientific certainty. Sarah Martinez, our audio forensics expert, authenticated the recordings Marion had captured with technical precision that left absolutely no room for doubt. These recordings were made on October 18th using a standard smartphone device, she testified confidently. Voice analysis confirms the speakers are Harvey Ashe and Eleanor Ashe. The recordings have not been edited, manipulated, or altered in any way whatsoever. She played the damning conversation for the entire courtroom. Harvey's voice filled the space with crystal clarity. "We need to increase the dosage. He's still too alert." When the recordings finished playing, Judge Martinez looked directly at Harvey and Eleanor with undisguised disgust and contempt. "Would counsel like to cross-examine these witnesses?" Harvey's attorney whispered frantically with his clients. Then Harvey himself stood up with visible desperation and panic. "Your Honor, we were only trying to protect my father's interests." He seemed genuinely confused, increasingly forgetful. "We thought we were doing the right thing for the family." "You thought you'd drug him unconscious and steal his money?" Judge Martinez's voice could have frozen molten steel. "Mr. Ashe, is there anything you'd like to say to this court?" I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 40 years of honest business practices behind every word. "Your Honor, I built those restaurants with my bare hands and my late wife's unwavering faith. Every dollar, every decision, every relationship was earned through honest work and treating people fairly. What my son and daughter-in-law attempted wasn't just theft. It was the complete murder of everything Helen and I built together." Judge Martinez nodded with grim satisfaction. "Petition for conservatorship is hereby denied completely and permanently. Mr. Harvey Ashe and Mrs. Eleanor Ashe, you are immediately ordered to cease any involvement whatsoever in the financial affairs of Vernon Ashe or his business entities. All stolen assets are to be returned within 30 days with interest." She paused, looking directly at the couple who'd been so arrogantly confident 2 hours earlier. "I'm also referring this entire matter to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal investigation. Elder abuse, fraud, and criminal conspiracy are serious felonies in this state, and this court will absolutely not tolerate such violations." The truth had finally been completely revealed, and justice was beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our flagship restaurant, watching Marion train 2 new managers with the same patience and attention to detail that Helen had once shown me. She'd accepted my offer to become operations director, with full authority over daily management across all 8 locations and a substantial salary increase that reflected her loyalty and courage. The legal aftermath had been swift, decisive, and satisfying. Harvey and Eleanor pled guilty to multiple charges of financial elder abuse and fraud, rather than face a lengthy public trial that would have destroyed any remaining shred of their reputations. They received 5 years probation, 1,500 hours of community service, and a court order to repay every stolen dollar with substantial interest and penalties. Harvey's business license was permanently revoked by the state. Eleanor's accounting certification was suspended indefinitely. Julian Blackwood wasn't nearly as fortunate. The FBI discovered he'd been running similar schemes across 3 different states, targeting elderly business owners with fabricated consulting contracts and compromised medical evaluations. He's currently serving 6 years in federal prison with absolutely no possibility of parole. Dr. Reeves lost his medical license permanently and faces ongoing civil lawsuits from dozens of other families who discovered similar fraudulent evaluations and patient exploitation. The money was returned completely, of course, every dollar, with interest and court-mandated penalties that nearly doubled the amount. But more importantly, the restaurants were safe. The 8 locations Helen and I had built continued serving customers, employing dedicated staff, anchoring their communities with the same values we'd established decades ago. Marion approached with the afternoon reports, her confidence and business acumen growing daily. "Grandfather, sales are up 12% this quarter. The new point-of-sale systems are working perfectly, and customer satisfaction scores are at all-time highs. Real point-of-sale systems this time, installed by legitimate technology consultants who provided actual services and honest, transparent invoices." I smiled, adjusting my old apron, the same faded brown one Helen had bought me 40 years ago, now more precious than any expensive piece of equipment. "Your grandmother would be incredibly proud of you, sweetheart. She'd be proud of you, too, for fighting back, for not letting them destroy what you built together with so much love. People frequently ask me if I'm angry about what happened, if I hate my son for what he attempted to do. The answer is more complicated than they expect. I'm deeply disappointed. I'm heartbroken that greed convinced Harvey and Eleanor to betray every value Helen and I tried to teach through our example. I'm devastated that it required hidden cameras and court orders to protect what we'd built with honest labor and genuine love for our community. But I'm not consumed by anger or hatred. Anger would have meant letting them poison more than just my daily foe. It would have meant allowing bitterness to contaminate the joy I still discover in this work, in these precious relationships, in the daily rhythm of feeding people and building community connections. This was never about revenge or punishment. It was about reclamation, about taking back what rightfully belonged to me and protecting it for the people who truly deserved it, my employees, my customers, my community. At 12:30, I sat in booth 7 and ate my daily foe. Marion had prepared it herself, star anise and cinnamon in perfect balance, exactly the way Helen had taught me all those decades ago when we were young and foolish and completely in love. No drugs this time, just the pure, clean taste of tradition carried forward with integrity and hope. Justice isn't always dramatic courtroom revelations and emotional confrontations. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical work built from careful evidence and persistent truth-telling. Sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is simply living well, staying true to your principles, and trusting that good work speaks for itself. If you know someone who might be facing what I faced, if an elderly relative seems suddenly confused, or if family members are pushing for quick financial decisions, listen to your instincts carefully. Ask difficult questions. Demand complete transparency. Get independent professional evaluations from doctors you choose yourself. Remember, genuine family loyalty should never require you to surrender your dignity, your autonomy, or your life's work to people who don't deserve it. The truth has a persistent way of surfacing, even when people try to bury it under false medical reports and forged documents. Sometimes you just need to be patient enough to let it rise, and brave enough to fight for what's rightfully yours. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you'll have a young server who's brave enough to lock the door and whisper the truth that saves everything you've worked for.